You know what they don't tell you about giving your life to God? They don't tell you that sometimes the very place that promises to bring you closer to Him can be the place that steals your soul piece by piece. I'm Margaret. I'm 78 years old now, and for 42 years of my life, I wore the habit of a nun. 42 years behind those pristine white walls that everyone thought were holy. But today, sitting here in my small apartment with a cup of tea getting cold in my hands, I need to tell you what really happened in that convent, because some sins don't look like sins at all. They look like devotion. I was 23 when I entered St. Catherine's Convent in upstate New York. It was 1969, and the world outside was changing so fast it made your head spin. There were protests, wars, young people shouting for freedom while their parents clutched their pearls and prayed for simpler times. Me, I wanted to escape all that noise. I wanted peace. I wanted purpose. I wanted to matter to something bigger than myself. And when I saw that convent for the first time, with its stone walls covered in ivy and the morning mist rolling across the gardens like God's own breath, I thought I'd found heaven on earth. The Mother Superior, Sister Agnes, she had this way about her. Soft-spoken, gentle smile, hands always folded perfectly at her waist. She looked at me that first day and said, "Margaret, we've been waiting for someone like you, someone pure, someone willing to surrender everything for His love." And I believed her. God help me, I believed every single word. The first few months were beautiful. We'd wake before dawn, and the silence felt sacred. We'd kneel in that cold chapel, our breath making little clouds in the winter air, and I swear I could feel something bigger than myself wrapping around my shoulders like a warm blanket. The other sisters, they seemed so at peace. Sister Mary Catherine with her sweet humming while she tended the gardens. Sister Teresa with her gentle hands always mending someone's torn habit or bandaging a scraped knee. I thought, this is it. This is where I belong. But you see, that's how it starts. The poison always tastes sweet at first. It began with small things. Sister Agnes would ask us questions during our evening reflections. "Did you have any impure thoughts today?" She'd ask. Her voice soft as velvet, but her eyes were like steel. At first I'd say no because I hadn't, but then she'd lean in close and whisper, "Are you certain, Margaret? Because God sees everything, even the thoughts you don't know you're having." And suddenly I wasn't certain anymore. Suddenly I was terrified that maybe I had sinned without even knowing it. She made us keep journals. Write down every thought, every feeling, every moment of doubt, she instructed. Confession isn't just once a week. It's every moment of every day. So we wrote pages and pages of our innermost thoughts, our fears, our tiny rebellions. And she read them. Every single word. She knew everything about us, and we knew nothing about her except what she wanted us to see. There was a young novice named Sarah who came to the convent about 2 years after me. She was 19, fresh-faced, with these bright green eyes that sparkled when she talked about her faith. She reminded me of myself when I first arrived, full of hope, full of certainty that this was her calling. We became close, the way sisters do when they're drowning in the same waters and desperately need someone to hold on to. One night, Sarah came to my cell after lights out. That was forbidden, of course, but she was shaking so hard I could hear her teeth chattering in the darkness. She crawled into my narrow bed and whispered, "Margaret, I'm scared." I prayed for 2 hours tonight and I felt nothing. What if God isn't listening to me anymore? What if I'm not good enough? I held her while she cried and I lied to her. I told her it would be okay, that God was always listening, that she just needed to have faith. But the truth was I'd stopped feeling God's presence months ago. I'd stopped feeling much of anything at all. Now let me pause here and ask you something. If you're watching this, wherever you are right now, would you take a moment and write in the comments where you're watching from? Are you in your living room, in bed late at night, sitting in your car during lunch break? I want to know because I need to know I'm not alone in this, that my story matters to someone out there in the world. So please just take 5 seconds and tell me where you are. It would mean everything to this old woman's heart. The rules got stricter as the years went on. We weren't allowed to laugh too loudly because joy was meant to be contained and holy, not wild and worldly. We weren't allowed to have favorite foods because that showed attachment to earthly pleasures. We weren't allowed to write letters home more than once a month because family ties could distract from our devotion to our true family in Christ. Every part of us that made us human was slowly, methodically cut away, and we let it happen because we thought it was holy. Sister Agnes had this punishment she used when someone broke the rules. She called it the silence. If you committed an infraction, major or minor, she would instruct every single sister in the convent not to speak to you, not to look at you, not to acknowledge your existence in any way for days or sometimes weeks. You'd walk into the dining hall and 40 women would turn their eyes away as if you were invisible. You'd work in the kitchen and hands would pass dishes around you like you were a ghost. You'd kneel in chapel and the space next to you would remain empty even though the pews were crowded. I experienced the silence 3 times. The first was for humming while I folded laundry. Just humming. A simple tune my mother used to sing when I was little. 7 days of being erased from existence. The second time was for defending Sarah when Sister Agnes accused her of vanity for taking too long to braid her hair before morning prayers. 12 days that time. The third time, I don't even remember what I did wrong, but it lasted nearly 3 weeks. And let me tell you something about being invisible while you're still breathing. It does something to your mind that I still can't fully explain. You start to wonder if you're real. You start to think maybe you deserve it. Maybe you're so fundamentally broken that you shouldn't exist at all. Sarah wasn't as strong as me. Or maybe she was stronger because she got out before it completely destroyed her. After 5 years in the convent, she started having these episodes. She'd wake up screaming in the middle of the night, clawing at her habit like it was suffocating her. During prayers, she'd suddenly break down sobbing, great heaving sobs that echoed off the stone walls. Sister Agnes said Sarah was being tested by demons and that we needed to pray harder for her soul. One morning, I found Sarah in the bathroom. She'd cut off all her hair with sewing scissors. It lay in dark clumps all around her feet, and she was just standing there, staring at herself in the mirror with these empty eyes. I needed to see myself, she whispered. I needed to remember what I looked like. They sent her away that afternoon. Said she needed special care at a facility that could help with her spiritual crisis. I never saw her again. I wrote to her family years later after I'd left. They told me Sarah had spent 2 years in a psychiatric hospital. 2 years trying to remember who she was before the convent convinced her she was nothing. I think about Sarah every single day. I think about how we were supposed to be brides of Christ, but instead we became prisoners of a woman who used God's name to justify her cruelty. Sister Agnes never hit us, never raised her voice. She didn't have to. She'd mastered something far more insidious. She'd learned how to make us hate ourselves so completely that we'd do anything, endure anything, for the smallest crumb of her approval. There were good sisters there too. I don't want you to think it was all darkness. Sister Mary Catherine, the one who tended the gardens, she'd slip extra food onto my plate when she thought no one was looking. Sister Teresa would sometimes squeeze my hand during prayers, just for a second, a tiny acknowledgement that I was seen and I mattered. But they were scared too. We were all scared, and fear makes cowards of the best of us. The breaking point for me came on a Tuesday morning in March. I remember because there were crocuses blooming outside the chapel windows. These tiny purple flowers pushing up through the half-frozen ground. I was 57 years old. I'd been in that convent for 34 years, more than half my life, and I was kneeling there during morning prayers when I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt anything resembling joy, or hope, or even basic contentment. I was hollow, completely, utterly hollow. That's when it hit me. The real sin wasn't in the world outside those walls. The real sin was what we were doing to each other inside them. We were killing each other's spirits in the name of holiness. We were burying each other's humanity and calling it devotion. And I was just as guilty as Sister Agnes because I'd stood by and watched it happen. I'd participated. I'd survived by becoming numb. And my survival had cost me everything that made me who I was. I didn't leave dramatically. There was no big confrontation, no stirring speech. I simply went to Sister Agnes's office one afternoon and told her I needed to leave for medical reasons. I'd been having these chest pains, see? Terrible pressure that made it hard to breathe. The doctor in town said my heart was fine, but I knew what it really was. My body was trying to tell me what my mind refused to accept. It was trying to escape, even if I wouldn't let it. Sister Agnes looked at me for a long moment, and for just a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Was it satisfaction? Disappointment? Relief? I'll never know. She simply nodded and said, "Sometimes, Margaret, God calls us to different paths. I'll pray you find yours. No warmth, no acknowledgement of 34 years of service. Just cold dismissal, like I was a servant being let go for poor performance." Walking out those convent doors was the most terrifying thing I'd ever done. I was 57 years old and I had nothing. No money, no skills that mattered in the real world, no family left who remembered me. My parents had died while I was inside. My sister had stopped writing after the first few years. I was alone in a way that made the silence of the convent seem gentle by comparison. Those first months outside were brutal. I lived in a tiny room at a boarding house run by a kind widow named Ruth. She never asked questions, just gave me a place to sleep and brought me soup when she heard me crying through the walls. And I cried a lot. I'd spent 34 years learning not to feel, and now that the dam had broken, everything came flooding out at once. Grief, rage, shame, terrible, crushing shame that I'd wasted so much of my life, that I'd let them take so much from me. But here's what they don't tell you about healing. It doesn't happen in some dramatic moment of revelation. It happens in tiny increments so small you almost don't notice them. It's the first morning you wake up and don't immediately feel that crushing weight on your chest. It's the day you laugh at something silly and don't immediately feel guilty for it. It's realizing you just spent an entire hour not thinking about the convent, not reliving your mistakes, not wondering if you'll ever be whole again. For me, healing came through the most unexpected source. I got a job at a coffee shop. Can you imagine? A 57-year-old former nun learning to use an espresso machine, memorizing orders, making small talk with strangers. At first, every interaction felt like walking on broken glass. I didn't know how to be casual. I didn't know how to joke or flirt or complain about the weather. But slowly, the woman named Margaret started to emerge from under all those layers of Sister Margaret. There was this regular customer, an older gentleman named Frank, who came in every morning for a black coffee and a blueberry muffin. He'd sit by the window and read his newspaper, and one day he looked up and said, "You know, you have a beautiful smile. You should use it more often." Such a simple thing, such a small kindness. But I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes because I couldn't remember the last time someone had complimented me without it being followed by a "but" or a correction or a reminder that pride was a sin. Frank and I became friends. He was a widower and his wife had passed 5 years earlier. He understood loneliness. He understood what it felt like to have to rebuild yourself when everything you knew was gone. We'd sit together on my breaks and he'd tell me stories about his life, about the mistakes he'd made, the regrets he carried. And slowly I started telling him my stories too. Not the sanitized versions I'd created to survive, but the real, messy, painful truths of what those years had done to me. One day, he asked me, "Margaret, do you believe in God anymore?" And I had to sit with that question for a long time before I could answer. Because the God I'd been taught to worship in that convent, the God who demanded total surrender and punished the smallest human weakness, the God Sister Agnes had used as a weapon to control and manipulate us, that God I couldn't believe in anymore, that God was a monster. But sitting there in that coffee shop, watching the morning sun stream through the windows, seeing people laugh and argue and live their beautifully imperfect lives, I felt something. Not the rigid, fearful devotion of the convent, but something warmer. Something that felt like love might feel if it wasn't being choked by rules and shame. Maybe that was God. Maybe God was in the mess and the mistakes and the courage it takes to keep getting up every morning even when you're broken. Maybe God was never in those white walls at all. I'm 78 now. I've been out of the convent for 21 years. I never married, never had children, though sometimes I wonder what that life might have been like. But I've built something here. I have friends. I volunteer at the library on Tuesdays. I have a small garden where I grow tomatoes and basil, and the smell of fresh basil still makes me cry sometimes because it reminds me of Sister Mary Catherine and her kindness in that dark place. I'm telling you this story now because I need you to understand something. Abuse doesn't always look like fists and broken bones. Sometimes it looks like devotion. Sometimes it wears a habit and speaks in soft tones and quotes scripture. Sometimes it convinces you that your pain is holy, that your suffering brings you closer to God, that erasing yourself is the highest form of love. If you're watching this and you're in a place, any place, religious or otherwise, where they're asking you to become less than you are, where they're telling you that your feelings are wrong, your thoughts are sinful, your very humanity is an obstacle to overcome. Please hear me. That is not love. That is not God. That is control masquerading as care. Your doubt is not weakness. Your questions are not sins. Your need for connection, for joy, for basic human warmth, these are not flaws to be corrected. They're what make you alive. They're what make you real. I lost 34 years learning that lesson. 34 years of my one precious life, given to people who saw me as a resource to be managed rather than a soul to be cherished. And I can never get those years back. I can never undo the damage that was done to me and to the other women who suffered alongside me. Sarah, wherever you are, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't speak up. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder. I'm sorry I let my fear of Sister Agnes become more powerful than my love for you. But I'm also here. I'm still here, still breathing, still learning how to be human after all those years of being told that human was something to transcend. And if my story can reach even one person who needs to hear it, who needs permission to walk away from a place that's killing their spirit, then maybe these 78 years have counted for something after all. You know what I've learned? Real faith, the kind that actually matters, it doesn't make you smaller. It makes you bigger. It doesn't erase your personality. It celebrates it. Real faith doesn't demand that you stop being human. It asks you to be fully, courageously, messily human and to find God in that humanity rather than in spite of it. Sister Agnes died 3 years ago. I found out through an obituary in the local paper. They called her a devoted servant of God who dedicated her life to spiritual guidance. They had a big funeral. Lots of important people came, and I sat in my apartment holding that newspaper, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief, nothing, because she'd already taken so much from me. I wasn't going to give her my emotions too, even in death. But I did go to the cemetery a few weeks later. Not to her grave, to the small plot where they buried the sisters who die in service. There's a simple stone there with all their names carved into it. I found Sarah's name. She died 2 years after I left, 33 years old. The stone didn't say how, but I know. I know the way you know things in your bones. The convent killed her. Maybe not directly, maybe not with a weapon you could see, but they killed her just the same. I sat by that stone and I told Sarah everything I should have said when she was alive. I told her she was brave and brilliant and that she deserved so much better than what we got. I told her I was sorry. I told her I loved her. And I promised her that I would tell our story, that I wouldn't let her disappear into silence the way Sister Agnes wanted all of us to disappear. So here I am, keeping that promise, sitting in front of this camera with my thin white hair and my wrinkled hands and my voice that shakes when I talk about these things, telling you what happened behind those pristine white walls, telling you that evil doesn't always announce itself with thunder and darkness. Sometimes it comes dressed in virtue. Sometimes it uses the language of love to commit the acts of hatred. And I'm telling you that if you've survived something like this, if you've been in a place that tried to erase you, that tried to convince you your pain was holy, you are not alone. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not too damaged to deserve love and peace and all the simple joys of being human. It's taken me 21 years to get to a place where I can sleep through the night without waking up in a panic, convinced I've committed some unforgivable sin. 21 years to learn that it's okay to want things, to enjoy things, to take up space in the world. 21 years to understand that the woman I am now, with all my doubts and questions and messy emotions, is worth more than the perfect, silent, obedient ghost I was trained to be. I wish I could tell you I've completely healed. That would be a lie. Some wounds go too deep. Some losses can't be recovered. But I can tell you I'm here. I'm real. I'm Margaret, not Sister Margaret. And I'm finally, after all these years, learning what it means to be free. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to an old woman's confession. Thank you for bearing witness to the story I carried in silence for so long. And if my words have touched something in you, if they've reminded you of your own struggles, or given you courage to walk away from something that's hurting you, then please share this. Let's make sure that places like St. Catherine's Convent and the Sister Agneses of the world can't hide in the darkness anymore. We survive by speaking. We heal by being heard. And we honor those who didn't make it out by refusing to let their stories die in silence. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And please, take care of each other out there. The world is hard enough without us making it harder. Show each other the kindness that I wish someone had shown me. Ask the questions that need asking. Stand up for the people who can't stand up for themselves. And remember that your humanity, your beautiful, flawed, magnificent humanity, is not something to overcome. It's the whole point. God bless you all, wherever you are, whatever you believe. May you find the peace and love that was stolen from me for so many years. May you find them sooner. May you never have to learn the lessons I learned the way I had to learn them. And may you always, always remember that you are enough exactly as you are.